welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome, everybody.
So Mark is going to tell us about a car company that has a terribly hard pronunciation, Huawei, Huawei. So what's this all about, Mark?
Well, actually, Huawei doesn't make cars yet.
Okay.
They are, if you think back, and the CFO who was arrested in Canada for potentially stealing U.S. secrets 2-3 years ago, Huawei technology, which they're mainly a cell phone maker. They've been mainly banned from selling their products here in the United States. They filed a patent for a battery, very into lithium batteries with all the cell phone and technology. This is a car battery.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the idea that you could have a car that drives 1,800 miles between charges.
Wow. Okay, that beats all the records.
Yeah. And then when you go to charge it, you plug it in for 5 minutes and the battery is fully charged.
Another record-breaking event.
Absolutely. So Huawei has filed a patent for just such a battery that they have achieved, at least in lab testing, both ranges, equivalent ranges of almost 1,800 miles or 3,000 kilometers, and charging rates of 5 minutes or less on said batteries. The battery achieves energy densities of up to 500 watt-hours per kilogram. Now, a lithium-ion battery is about 200 watt-hours per kilo, to 300 on the most recent technology, and the lithium iron phosphate batteries run in between 180 and about 240 watt-hours per kilo. So we're talking energy densities in a solid-state battery that are 2 to 3 times what we have today on cars. For charging, current technology is about 350 kilowatts. That's your 4th gen Tesla charger or your 800 volt Electrify America charger. They put out about 350 kilowatts an hour. That would equate on a battery like this to a charge rate of about 45 to 50 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there's charging technology coming down the pike. Megawatt charging is coming down the pike, first for large-scale vehicles, the Tesla semis, the large trucks, you've got the Dodge Ram Revolution, if it ever comes out, it is promising on their big battery pack, a 225 kilowatt battery pack. And with megawatt charging, that 50 minutes could be cut down to as little as 12 to 16 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we're not far off on technology for charging, and we're not far off on technology for battery. They've placed a patent that they believe they can put one of these into a car that'll give you a week's worth of range all in one charge. There are a lot of ifs, though. If Huawei can really achieve this energy density, would it not make more sense to make a smaller battery?
Mm-hmm. Less weight?
Yeah, yep. It's less weight. It's more affordable. Researchers have shown that anything over about 600 miles of range is irrelevant when it comes to range anxiety.
It's unnecessary, yeah. You're going to stop for a break anyway, you know?
Yeah, even if it's just a bio break, people can't sit in cars long enough to drive 600 miles. Even when they're driving down, something like your Autobahn, if you're going 140 miles an hour, your 600 miles is still 4 hours of driving on the Autobahn.
Right.
So that 600-mile point is usually about a day's worth of driving. You could go for an entire day, plug in at the hotel, charge at night, and the next day you're off. Right now, this technology is also in the lab. They haven't proven that it's scalable. Think about the dry cathodes that Tesla has been trying to put in its LFP batteries and how many years it took Tesla to perfect the manufacturing process up to scale. Tesla had LFP and dry cathode batteries working in the lab about the time the Model the Model 3 came out in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now 2025, and they're still just trying to dial in how the dry cathode manufacturing technology is going to work. And it's not current in any cars. That's 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, for the next gen technology for charging, when will that 1 to 1.5 megawatt charging hold actually rolled out? And that's a lot of current.
Mm-hmm. Well, stay with us because later on in this segment, we're going to be talking about yet another new battery chemistry, which is sodium ion, one of the most plentiful, elements on this planet.
Yes.
So, in the meantime, the background behind us is yet another theme that we're going to be covering, which is a marriage between Tesla and Apple regarding using their Starlink system for cell phones.
That's a pretty exciting development, actually.
Yes. Yep. But in the meantime, we've got someone chiming in. PYGKLB. Good morning, y'all. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are things in Oregon? I hope they're doing well for you.
Mm-hmm. So another article that popped up last week was from the Aussies, and there is a investor advisor there called Scott Pape, and he calls himself the Barefoot Investor. Well, he delivered a warning last week over buying an electric vehicle, just as the popular provider of EVs, BYD, recorded its best month ever for sales in Australia. The Chinese brand now sells more cars in Australia than Tesla and has beaten out the likes of Kia and Mitsubishi. So this warning was sparked by his father's buying a new car and him suggesting that he should look at buying a Tesla Model Y.
Okay.
And his father's comeback was, well, he wasn't a fan of that suggestion because he pointed out some practical concerns with buying an electric car. One of them being where he would charge, how much it would cost to fix, and what it would be worth in a few years. So that led this Barefoot Investor to go a bit further with his analysis. And he basically said that cars have always been a terrible investment. EVs just let you feel a bit more morally superior while you do it. Cars, he says, are a depreciating asset, meaning they decline in value over time. And in China, BYD, again, the world's biggest EV manufacturer now, we couldn't have said that 6 months ago, recently slashed its local car prices by 34% overnight, just like that.
Okay, well.
Because they can, right?
It's still over time.
Right. So Pape says that he grew up choosing between, in Australia, of course, Ford or a Holden, and okay, maybe some Toyotas and Mazdas. But he feels that the future of Australia is going to be a bunch of weird-sounding Chinese brand names that get better and cheaper every year, in Australia at least. He also says it's an electric race to the bottom with no one at the wheel. Currently, the cheapest EV for sale in Australia is the BYD Dolphin Essential, which is available for $32,138. Recent research also found that the key reasons that Aussies lack confidence in EVs include doubts over the owner's ability to find qualified EV technicians and concerns about viability and safety of secondhand EV parts. They haven't really developed their EV repair infrastructure to the extent that other countries have, like ours.
Sure, and everything is so new there. You would want to say price war when you hear an EV maker cutting prices by a third. You remember when Tesla did that with the Model 3 and the Model Y at the beginning of 24?
Oh, yeah.
No, this is an EV price war. The problem with that logic is that a price war indicates usually when the war is over, the prices go back up.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't as much a price war as it was just a cut in cost.
Just a reduction, yeah.
Just a straight up reduction in prices. And so I think that's what's happening here too. True. We walked through Costco this weekend, my wife and I. We'll go to Costco, pick up some fruit and stuff. And right in the entrance, they have the TVs.
Yes, the big flat screens.
The great big flat screen TVs. And it wasn't that long ago that a 75-inch flat screen TV, that was like the premium TV, especially if it was 4K.
If you had room enough on your wall to place it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
if you
pretty
had
big.
room enough on your wall to place a 4K flat screen TV, it was going to set you back $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a 100-inch flat screen TV for $14.99.
Wow. What's next?
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got, PYG is saying bright and sunny in Oregon. Well, that's good news.
That's good
Yeah.
news.
So another article came out last week, and I've got an image here that we can pop up. There we go. Give me a chance to get this full screen on mine. There we go. You see these a lot nowadays. 10 times safer than the average U.S. driver when navigating using autopilot technology. And that's just the beginning. As autonomous driving becomes even more sophisticated, I could see the accident rate reducing to negligible levels.
Yeah, then what's going to happen to auto insurance companies?
Yes. We have to say goodbye to auto insurance companies, I'm afraid. Yes. All right, so another image here, and this one has to do with that new battery chemistry. People are pretty excited about this in the EV space. They say that the global economy is shifting and energy innovation is leading the way. The breakthrough is sodium-ion battery technology, which offers safer, scalable alternative to lithium without relying on rare minerals or fragile supply chains.
Yes.
And that's going to continue to become a big issue. This is spearheaded by the world's largest battery maker, which now again is in China, CATL, C-A-T-L.
Mm-hmm.
The chairman recently called out Elon Musk, saying that his lithium battery technology is going to fail and will never be successful. Why, they say? Because CATL believes there's a better solution, sodium-ion batteries. In fact, they think this technology could replace half of all battery production within the next few years. And CATL, of course, being the world's now largest battery maker, said that this is quite realistic. And CATL, by the way, produces more batteries than Tesla, Panasonic, and LG combined. So they have some credibility in this. Yeah, isn't that something? So here's why sodium ion is a game changer. First, it generates significantly less heat and offers better thermal stability than lithium ion. It's also far less flammable, even across wide operating temperatures. It is optimized for high power delivery, especially in space-efficient industrial designs. It can be safely placed close to sensitive IT and data equipment, and it's purpose-built for handling heavy-duty, high-power loads at scale. I have a picture here that probably will resonate a bit, and here we are. These are some of the bullet points as to what makes it better, and there's a big old salt mountain there.
Well, and I wanted to, I'm like, okay, ChatGPT, come to my rescue. How abundant is salt compared to lithium? We know it's more abundant, but how much more?
And both are salts, by the way.
Both are salts. They
Right.
both sit on the far right side of the periodic table of elements. In fact, sodium sits just above lithium. It's a little bit lighter as a raw element than lithium is. What we see with salt, of course, is sodium chloride. So sodium and chlorine combine together to make what we think of as salt. Sodium itself is the 6th most abundant element on Earth. We could probably name the top 5. They would include hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. Those are probably 4 of the other 5. Sodium is right up there in that range. In fact, about 23,000 parts per million, if you combine all elements, is sodium.
And let's not remember, the oceans are full of sodium.
That's right. Our oceans have about 10,800 parts per million of sodium. Now compare that to lithium. You and I have talked in the past. There's roughly 1,000 times more lithium to be extracted from seawater than there is on land in known reserves. It's an amazing amount. That's still 0.18 parts per million of lithium. Their sodium is about 60,000 times more abundant in seawater than it is than lithium is. Sodium is over 1,000 times more abundant on land, where sodium is 23,000 parts per million. Lithium is about 20 parts per million. So lithium is so much less common. And lest we forget, what's the country that has the current stranglehold on all of the rare earth elements that are needed to make a lithium ion battery? Cattle happens to live in that country. That's where cattle may be right, but China may be mortgaging its own future because sodium is so abundant and so easy to find. For stationary power application, sodium is the ideal source. You don't need to worry about space. You do need to worry about energy. You need to worry about cost. And sodium is so much less expensive than lithium.
Right. And because of the existing mining that's been going on for, a millennium or more, that also reduces the cost. I remember in my hometown, actually, there's a Salinenwerke, they call it, which was a salt works. And for, a couple hundred years or so, most of the salt. In fact, in Austria, not too far away, Salzburg, that means salt village or Saltburg.
Yeah, there you go. And even the U.S. Strategic Oil Reserve, those hundreds of millions of barrels of oil that we keep set aside for a rainy day, they sit in salt caves.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. All right. So another news item that we have here, I'm going to pop up an image for you. We talk about China quite a bit these days, and we're in awe of the rapid changes occurring there. For those of you that have been around a while, China was really of no consequence in the last century. Nixon was one of the first ones that began to open up the country and begin to expose us to the culture. But China has really taken the lead in a number of categories far more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. Here's some amazing statistics about China from the New York Times. China has installed more robots each year from 2021 through 23 than the rest of the world combined.
Wow.
And is 7 times more than in the U.S. 7 times as many more than in the U.S. China has 700,000 clean energy patents, more than half of the world's total. The entire world now, mind you, all the countries.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. China has more wind turbines and solar panels installed last year than the rest of the world combined. We're all excited about Europe going more solar towards sustainable energy, Norway. We're going to talk about Iceland in a little bit here as well, geothermal. But China, again, leads the way. In 2008, the U.S. produced half of the world's polysilicon. Today, China produces 90%.
That's an amazing statistic. And I'll bet you that the United States has not gone down in its production. It's China going up.
Yes, good point. 10 of the largest solar facilities in the world are in China. BYD is building 2 EV factories that will each produce twice the amount of cars as the largest car factory in the world. China exports 21 times as many batteries as the United States. China exports 580 times as many solar panels and modules as the U.S. And China exports 3 times as many EVs as the U.S. So China, they say, is the biggest automaker, the biggest battery maker, the biggest electronics company, and each introducing systems that can recharge electric cars in just 5 minutes.
Well, the biggest electronics company is Huawei. We were just talking about it. The biggest battery maker is Cattle. PYG KLB has an apt correction for me, and thank you for bringing that up. He says, sorry, Mark, lithium is above sodium on the alkali metals group.
Okay.
And you know what? He's right. Lithium is sitting there. Correct me, because I may be wrong. I think lithium might be as high as a number 3 or 4 element.
And I should know this because one of my sons is an engineer, and he loved wearing the T-shirt with a periodic table on it all
Yes.
the time.
Lithium, sorry guys.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Lithium is just right above sodium. If you look at it on the periodic table, it goes hydrogen, lithium, sodium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Okay.
just one above.
Okay, so it is above it on the far left of the, and it's on the alkali side, right? On the far left side.
Correct, on the far left side.
Okay, and I was thinking it was on the far right side. So chlorine or chloride is the one that's on the right side.
So, we often are could get pessimistic about the health of our planet and whether we can really make a change, whether
Yeah.
we can really impact anything. Well, it turns out that last week MIT has confirmed that the Antarctic ozone hole is healing and could be fully healed by 2060. If you remember in the last century, in fact, it was 2080, I believe, there was a great concern because we had a hole in the ozone layer, and it was not diminishing, it was growing.
I do remember that. It was about 1980 or so that I remember being in middle school, and they were talking about the hole in the ozone layer, and the Earth was going to come to an end.
And its depletion was due to chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs as they call them, that are used in refrigerants, aerosols, hairspray, first identified in the 80s, leading to the 1987 Montreal Protocol. Well, this was the first time that the world really decided that there is an existential threat and that some action needs to be taken. And of course, everybody, the naysayers all said, oh, good luck with that one, right?
Right.
Self-serving national interests abound. Well, this global agreement phased out CFC production and significantly reduced the ozone-depleting substances in the atmosphere. It has been shrinking since the year 2000, and the reduction in CFCs has allowed ozone levels to gradually replenish, with the hole size decreasing approximately 20% since its peak
Wow.
in the 80s. The long-term trend, they say, is positive. Full recovery, they feel, by 2060. And again, this is a statement that the healing is a landmark success in global environmental cooperation, demonstrating that concerted action can reverse significant ecological damage, protecting ecosystems and human health from UV-related risks. Now, of course, the next one on the agenda is global warming.
It is on the agenda. We're sitting here in an air-conditioned studio. Freon is one of the more prevalent CFCs that there was so much hand-wringing and, oh, you're going to kill air conditioning and it'll never be the same and it'll never be as good as it is now. The replacement for Freon has proven to be safer, although still not considered completely safe. It's in the process of potentially being replaced, but far more effective as well. Freon, the industry would never go back to Freon now because Freon is so much less efficient than the current technology. And I don't remember what the R134 stands for. Freon was the R22.
Oh, I remember buying R12 to put in our cars.
Yeah, or the R12.
R22 for freezers. And if you needed to bleed a system or purge a system, you just opened the valve and psst, pumping it into the environment.
That's right.
We, interestingly enough, in the 80s when we were building computer rooms, data centers, halon fire suppression was a very large part of it. There was clean power, there was data cabling, there was HVAC in a computer room, and there was fire suppression.
Yes.
And it was large halon tanks that used to achieve that.
Yes.
When they would test them, there were nozzles in the ceiling. And the function of halon was to reduce the oxygen level down to 7% in that room so it no longer supports combustion, which was a safe level for humans to get out of that room. They couldn't jog in there because they'd run out of oxygen.
Right,
But
right.
they could walk to the exit door safely.
Yeah, they wouldn't suffocate, in other
Right.
words.
Yep. So things have changed, folks. All right, everybody's familiar with Supercar Blondie, I take it. She's one of the most successful social media individuals, I think, on the planet today. And she used to comment on exotic cars and go through the motions of sitting inside one and starting it up and talking about all the features. And she's been branching into quite a bit more than that these days.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that came up was it was a study that found, let me bring up that image for you. And this is a Supercar Blondie presentation, so it's got to be true. It says study finds that only using public EV chargers and not charging at home is still cheaper than paying for gas. Now, Mark, being the analytical that he is, has some additional data for us.
Oh, I had to ask the question. I could not.
How true is this, right?
So yeah, exactly. How true is this? So I went to my Chat GPT, and I said, okay, talk to me. Let's take a look at 100% supercharging and a gasoline car that gets 25 miles to the gallon. And then I said, you know what, walk that back. What's the average miles per gallon in the U.S.?
Mhm.
And the most recent numbers from 2023 are around 27 miles a gallon. So if you do 100% supercharging, the most popular current models of a Tesla are the Model 3 and Model Y. They get about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. There are some cars that are less efficient, some that are more. I'll stick with that. And the typical supercharger rate averages about 45 cents per kilowatt. If charging is done 100% on a supercharger, the break-even price between electric and gasoline is about $3.04.
Mm-hmm.
Now, right now, the nationwide cost of gasoline, summer blends are a little bit higher, but it is about $3.20 to $3.30 nationwide.
So it's close. It's still
close,
below, but it's close.
It is
Yeah.
still below. However, I went ahead and, kind of the Mythbuster style, say, okay, well, let's get something that might be a little more realistic. Most people don't charge 100% at public supercharging stations. So let's go 25% public on a Tesla supercharger and 75% home charging. Here in Arizona, the nighttime energy rate, you can get time of use plans, and I can get a discounted rate of anywhere from 5.5 to 7 cents per kilowatt
hour. Yeah.
And so I figured, 6.9 cents right at the top of that range, we'll use that. Then the break-even point falls to $1.11.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning if you're paying more than $1.11 per gallon of gasoline, you're paying too much.
So it's a third the cost of gasoline usage.
Yeah. So currently, she's right. Charging your electric vehicle is about a third the cost of a gasoline vehicle for filling it up with fuel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, going on to the next topic here. We've got another China article. And there you go. China, more wind turbines and solar panels were installed in 2024 than in the rest of the world combined. I'm just curious, how are they doing this? Is this all government subsidized? And if so, where's the government getting the money from? Anyway, lots of questions there, but it's magic, it appears.
Well, a lot of questions. It's how many treasury bills is the Chinese government selling to do this? There's a lot of wind power and solar power being installed all over the world. And so it is notable to hear that China is doing more than all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, do you remember how many years ago was it that we had the Beijing Summer Olympics?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact year.
It's a decade ago or more. But I remember China being kind of embarrassed government-wise about how dirty and polluted Beijing was. They didn't care. They were like, whatever.
It was like the French Olympics where they were trying to do decathlon events in the Seine, and it was so dirty that some of the athletes were getting ill.
Yes.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. It
exactly.
Really is.
And it was embarrassing that in China that they couldn't even show a picture of the skyline because there was no skyline. And so, at the time, what China did is starting 2 weeks before the Olympics, they basically banned motor traffic.
Okay.
And then up through the entire Olympics, They kept the ban in place, and then afterwards, they allowed people to start driving, but they could only commute to work. In fact, in most cases, they just forced people to take a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But the effect, I think, had far-reaching consequences that includes this type of energy program.
It was a wake-up call as well.
It was a real wake-up call. Beijing, seeing Beijing actually have a skyline had a tremendous impact on the entire country.
Fascinating. Reminiscent of the worst days of COVID, when you could actually see South Mountain clearly from our homes here in Phoenix.
Yes.
With the reduction in traffic, the air just cleared up, and we're all going, wow, is this what it was like before ICE vehicles?
Yeah. And rush hour was 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday because everybody was going to the mall to do their weekly shopping.
Right. Yep. So another interesting article here, Tim Cook and Elon Musk shaking hands, doing a deal, as Donald Trump would say. And this deal has to do with Apple beginning to use the Starlink system for their iPhones, which is kind of interesting because it's a shift away from Apple's previous satellite supplier, which is Globalstar Inc. I didn't have a chance to look it up, but there was some conjecture this morning that the Globalstar stock is probably negatively affected by this.
I've heard that Globalstar stock was down at least 15% today.
Really? Okay.
And even though the partnership is somewhat limited, it's Apple devices that are on the T-Mobile network that are being tested.
Mm-hmm.
But Starlink is proving to be far more reliable,
Yep.
far faster, and far less expensive.
Fascinating. Yep, and it's definitely encompasses more of the planet than some of the other providers that they had tried to use. So be prepared for that. Apparently, Elon's companies, you sometimes have to wonder, is Elon strategically doing this, recognizing these opportunities are going to come along, or is he doing what any businessman does, which is invest and wait for the opportunity to reveal itself? And I'm going to go with the latter. I want to give Elon a lot of credit for being a really smart guy, but I think a lot of this has to do with putting his neck out there and then watching to see how it, eventually becomes monetizable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of this is, I still think of, part of this is the same idea, like my father, when I was growing up, had a car phone installed. He was a volunteer fireman in the fire department, helped pay for it. And he realized, this is back in the mid-'70s, and he realized this is going to be a thing. This new technology of a telephone over radio waves, it's going to be a new thing. And he said at the time, if I had $1,000 to invest, I would find one of these companies that's developing this technology and invest it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have $1,000.
Well, he had kids, yeah.
Yeah, kids, yes. And how many people have both the resources and the ideas? Elon Musk is one of those.
So here's another image that we're going to pop up. And this one, I couldn't show you the video. I tried, and I got a chat bot involved. And I said, all right, then at least give me the bullets. Watch the video and give me the bullets. I said, I can't get behind the firewall. And I didn't have Jesse available at the time. But anyway, this is a inside view of a cyber taxi, or cyber cab as they call it. These will be fully operational by 2027, they say. If you notice, there is no steering wheel. That's the first thing that I found fascinating.
I do.
The second thing is there are only 2 seats, because like the solo promotions that we've been doing, which support a notion that only 80% or 80% of drivers on the roads are driving by themselves, Tesla's banking on the same thing. All you need is 2 seats in a vehicle like this.
Yeah.
And then finally, the really cool part that I would love to have been able to transcribe and show you a bit more was, with a car like this, it will take you to work. Now, instead of paying high rent parking, like in San Francisco or New York, and where you even have a fee to drive on the streets downtown, right?
Right.
This car will drop you off and then go back home and wait to pick you up again. Or You could even take this after it drops you off, and it becomes a revenue-generating taxi.
There
In
you
other
go.
words, an Uber,
Yeah.
driverless Uber that goes out and makes you money while you're at work instead of you paying high rent parking. I think Jesse's grabbing a microphone.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's another stock to watch out for. Uber might go down if that happens.
Are you saying that we should short Uber at this point?
Not investment advice.
That's true, folks. We're not investors. I'm certainly not good at it if you look at my portfolio, but I try. I continuously try. And some days I wonder, would I be better off at a casino?
Yes.
As Steve Korf used to say, you know, the stock market, and he worked for Merrill Lynch for a while, he said the stock market is the world's largest casino.
I would agree with that totally.
All right, so here we have another picture, and this one talks about Iceland. I was surprised to see this. Iceland, they say, heats 90% of its homes using geothermal energy from volcanic sources. Well, it makes sense. That continent, it is a continent, right? Iceland?
Iceland is an island, and it sits exactly at the point where the North American plate
The tectonic
and the
plates. Yes.
European tectonic plate come together.
Right.
And so there's a tremendous amount of volcanic activity as a result of that.
So what these guys are doing is 90% of their homes now are heated using geothermal energy, making it the world's leader now in clean residential heating. It doesn't get any better than that.
Totally makes sense.
They are harnessing energy from over 600 hot springs and multiple active volcanoes. These guys are going to be cauldrons of activity, whether we harness or not.
Right.
Geothermal plants, they say, supply both electricity and hot water to thousands of households. So this system, they say, is not only cost effective, but it drastically reduces carbon emissions. And like you had pointed out, it's the abundance of tectonic activity due to its location in the mid-Atlantic range.
That's really cool. My brother-in-law and my sister, they have a house up in Alaska, and it is very much a thing in Alaska to heat your home through a heated floor.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes they'll use natural gas or whatever to actually heat the water, but it is simply water in pipes that are put right into the concrete as the floor is poured, and then the waters go back through that pipe and they get heated. The water gets heated and it's constantly cycling and heated, and then that's how the home itself gets heated. It's very efficient,
Clean. Yep.
very clean way of heating, and the only change to that process, I could see in Iceland, the only change is that the energy source. It might be as simple as they've drilled down a couple hundred feet to a hot spot right on the property where the home is, and they have the pipe going down a couple hundred feet, heating and coming back up.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just using the Earth's energy.
Free energy.
Yeah.
It's free, other than the installation costs, which you can amortize over a period of time. So another one, and if you've noticed, folks, we are definitely into sustainable energy.
Yes.
We're excited about the prospect of putting the planet back on track. So we tend to report quite a bit on that topic. But here's another one that surprised me. It turns out Morocco plans to export solar power to Europe via undersea cables.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You would think that the efficiencies wouldn't quite be there, but this apparently is one of the world's largest solar farms. Now, let's not forget that when you put a solar farm on certain types of land, you may interfere with, trees or greenery. This is desert. This is unusable land.
That's right.
So it's a perfect application for this. And of course, if it is a desert, more than likely, it's going to have an enormous amount of sunlight.
It's going to have an enormous amount of dust as well. I wonder how they deal with that.
Yeah, good question.
But for those that want the geography of, wow, Africa to Europe, that seems so far. I know that the Strait of Gibraltar separates Spain from northern Morocco by less than 6 miles.
That Oh, I didn't realize it was that short a distance.
It's a very short distance from the northern tip of Africa by Morocco to the southern tip of Spain at the Rock of Gibraltar. Yeah.
So that sounds quite doable. Now, of course, with transmission or substations, they could take that power and do what we do overland with hydropower, which is have step-up and step-down transformers and broadcast over long distances from there.
Yeah, it's perfectly reasonable to step your voltage up to 1,000,000 volts or something like that and transmit it across a dozen miles or so, including ocean floor, and then get it over into Spain and step it down a little bit and let it go continue on into the Spanish grid.
Mm-hmm. Got some comments here.
Yes, on YouTube, again, PYGKLB says, I'm following the direct-to-cell progress with interest. As a rural EMT, there are areas where I can't communicate by radio.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then YouTube, Ed Thorpe says that he would, he says Ed Thorpe would agree with you about the stock market and casinos.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right, so here's an interesting picture. And at first I thought, well, this can't be real. It's sci-fi, right? It turns out Neil deGrasse Tyson is the one reporting on this. And he's a pretty credible, scientist, or at least one that reports on science.
Yeah.
So just outside Seoul, there's a park lined with cherry blossoms, they say, and glass buildings, and a new vehicle is hovering over the pavement. It doesn't touch the road. It doesn't need rails. And most incredibly, it doesn't burn a drop of fuel. This apparently is developed by a South Korean company using an urban superconductor glide pod is what it's called. And it uses quantum levitation, harnessing superconducting magnets cooled with liquid nitrogen to float above a special alloy surface. They say, unlike traditional maglev trains, this system does not require expensive rail infrastructure. It can glide along thin, embedded panels, turning ordinary roads into silent, frictionless highways. So one of the lead engineers, Jin Jung Park, took a ride on this. She described her first test ride as unsettling, like stepping into the future and realizing the past just vanished beneath you. The pod made no sound, no bump, no vibration, only air rushing past the windows. Now, how fast can this thing go? Right now, the prototype can go 120 kilometers per hour. What is that, about 190 miles an hour, or 90 to 100?
No, not quite that fast. 100 kilometers an hour is about 60 miles an hour.
Oh,
So
that's right, it's
120 would
0.6.
be close to 70 miles an hour.
Okay, so freeway speeds, if you're doing the speed limit, that is.
Yes,
Yeah, following.
yes.
So no bump, no vibration, 120 kilometers per hour while using 70% less energy than an electric bus. And since it doesn't touch the road, there's no tire wear, no emissions, no brake dust pollution. So this is not science fiction, folks, anymore. The future is becoming quieter and using levitation.
That is so fascinating. One of the unintended consequences of this, if you ever have driven down an old country road that never sees tires on it, if it's paved, there are cracks in the pavement and plants growing up through the cracks.
Good point, yeah.
What would happen here if it never has anything but levitation devices on it? I would think the same thing would eventually happen.
We're just going to have to wait to see. Yeah, fascinating
I'm fascinated
technologies,
by it. That's so cool.
Well, folks, we've hit past our half hour. We really appreciate those of you that joined us for participating and joining us. We do these every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, and we will see you next week. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Take care.